Alright, well, welcome to our panel from Sounds to Sentences, How to Create a Language. My name is Corey, I'm from the University of Alberta. I'm a PhD student there, and this is my friend Joey from here at the University of Calgary, also a PhD student. And we're working together to talk to you today a bit about the linguistics of constructed languages. In our daily lives, we actually work on natural languages. There's at least 6,000 natural languages in the world. Of course, not all of those have been documented, so there's lots of work for us to do just on real natural languages without thinking about constructed languages. Joey works on, we both happen to work on First Nations languages, so Joey works on Blackfoot, local First Nations language in southern Alberta, and I work on Haida, spoken in British Columbia, and also on Dakota, spoken in northern Alberta, and here in southern Alberta too. And then we both happen to have interest in Celtic languages, so for Joey it's primarily Irish, sometimes known as Irish Gaelic, and for myself, Scottish Gaelic. And maybe on Thursday, some of you came to Joey's talk on expressing yourself in Klingon, so he's actually quite knowledgeable with Klingon as well. And myself, I'm a big Tolkien fan, and because he was a linguist and a historical linguist, I'm especially interested in the Elvish languages that he constructed, although I'm not nearly as knowledgeable about both. So to start things off, Joey actually constructed the language for Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game called Zill. Some of you might be familiar with this creature from Dungeons & Dragons. So Joey's constructed this amazing language for it, and it has sounds that we don't normally hear in most of the world's languages, such as clicks and ejectives. So I just want to set you up for that. The video we're about to play is a little bit quiet, so you have to listen very closely to hear this language, but we're going to start off with a clip of Zill.
Fiesa. Leaving the rest of your party behind at the entrance to the cavern, you move stealthily ahead inspecting for traps. Finding none, you get to the entrance to the next cave. Give me a listen check.
Ooh, natural 20. What do I hear?
Of course. From just ahead of you in the cavern, you hear whispering coming from an offshoot tunnel.
What does it sound like?
Something you've never heard before.
I motion for the rest of the party to join me silently.
So the whole reason I did that in the first place is I know my group in D&D is going to be going through this Zill temple. I wanted to add some extra flair to the game other than the miniature figures and the maps and stuff like that. And I thought it was relevant to share with you guys because, you know, it's a small language. I invented it in about 3 days. It only has about 200 words right now. But the contrast is, can you imagine if I just tried to make it up on the spot? It would sound like this. And none of my characters would take that seriously, and neither would I. It would be great comedy for the game, but you know, I'm actually using this language as a plot device in the game, and they get to discover new little bits here and there. So luckily for me, when I was coming up with this language, I didn't have to develop a concept, because Zill is already a monster race in Dungeons & Dragons. I know that they don't have any lips, they have these big protruding tusks, so it's impossible to give them a sound like in their language if they don't have lips to make a sound. But if you guys want to go out and you want to make your own languages for whatever reason, you're dungeon masters, you're home video people, you're writing a novel and you want your characters in your novel to speak a certain language, you have to think about who's going to be speaking or using your language. They might not even be speaking it, it might be written. Do you have a Klingon? Do you have an elf? Do you have a sine wave that, you know, your computer is beeping out? Do you have an alien physiology like the Predator? Do you have a code language that's based on a real language? And I want you to ask yourselves a few questions about how you come up with this. Who uses the language? Are they humanoid? Like I said, the Zill don't have lips, so they can't make lip-based sounds. Is the language both spoken and written? Do you actually have to come up with what the language sounds like, or can you just write it out? What climate is the language used in? And by this I mean, is it in Star Trek and in the future? Is it in the ancient past? Is it spoken by gorillas? What historical period is it used in? Can you have warp travel, or are you still on horse and cart? And most importantly, do you actually need to pronounce the language? I'll tell you, shamelessly, I had to record that Zill language and then cut out all of the pauses in between the syllables because it was so hard for me to actually go for the thing that means is in the language. So if you're developing a concept, say, who used my language? Okay, well, Klingon. Are they humanoid? Yes. Worf's son is part human, so we know that they're sexually compatible, therefore they probably have very similar biologies, physiologies. So they probably have the same vocal tract that humans have, so we don't expect non-human sounds in Klingon. Is the language written? Hijab! Yeah, you can see there we have both written Klingon, spoken Klingon. And so we need both a writing system and a sound system. It's used by a warrior race capable of interstellar travel, so we need words for photon torpedoes and discommendation and food replicators. What period is it? Future, so we need phasers and everything else. And does it need to be produced by human actors? Yes, it does, by Michael Dorn in this case. Conversely, if you're going to think of the Predator as who you're creating a language for, are they humanoid? No, they have a very different anatomy. You can see this guy's mouth is very different from ours. So he's going to have different sound possibilities than we have. This language is heard by the Predator clicking, and we see it on computer screens of your ship. And this is another warrior race capable of interstellar travel, so they probably have words for various starship components. But this one's more modern, so they're probably actually talking about telephones and vehicles with wheels on it, things like that. That we don't have words for telephone or McDonald's in Klingon. And thankfully, this one doesn't need to be produced by human actors. They can do something with the sound system on a computer and produce all these weird clicks and things like that. So speaking of sound systems, I'll hand you back to Corey.
All right, so we're just going to talk a bit about the first step you might want to take in creating a language. And usually kind of the most basic part of any language that linguists look at too is what are the sounds in this language. You need to know the sounds before you can start learning the words and figuring out how sentences work. So first question is, are you going to have a lot of sounds or just a few? And another name for speech sounds is phonemes. That's the linguistic term, but speech sound works just fine. So the number of speech sounds is not to be confused with the number of letters. For example, sometimes in English we use 2 letters for one speech sound. So S and H together are their own speech sound, sh. And that S produces the sound sh in linguistics. So first, we want to think about the number of vowels. So if we look around at the languages of the world, the fewest number of vowels that we can find is actually 2. There are languages that are theoretically said to just have 2 vowels, which is kind of incredible, but it happens. And the most you can have is about 22. So that is a dialect of Frisian spoken in Germany. English is on the middle end there. You see English is at 13, kind of in the middle. That's actually on the higher side. The average for language in the world is about 6 vowels, so not really that many vowels. And we'll see, I'm not going to talk any more about vowels, but most of the languages we're looking at today will have about 5 vowels, which is a very common number in our language. So then we come to number of consonants. So the fewest number of consonants we find is in a language in Papua New Guinea called Rhoticus, only 6 consonants. Whereas the maximum is about 80 in some of the Caucasian languages in what used to be the Soviet Union. And if we go with clicks, we can get even higher than 80, up to well over 100. However, in linguistics, we kind of consider this to be cheating. Clicks are very rare linguistically. They're only found in one part of the world, Southern Africa, and these languages are just very unique and remarkable. So, and I'm not going to talk any more about clicks today, I don't think, unless somebody has questions about them, but clicks are a really tricky area. So, I'll give you both numbers though, just for comparison. And world average is about 18 consonants. So you can see English is actually above the world average in both number of vowels and consonants. So when linguists go to describe the speech sounds of languages, we use this chart on the right-hand side called the IPA chart, International Phonetic Alphabet. I've given you the consonants at the top there and the vowels down below. And the consonant chart, the way it's laid out, is the columns represent the place of articulation. So if you look at the diagram of the person beside it, you see it kind of progresses from left to right. So you start at the lips with bilabial and labiodental and dental. So as the tongue moves through the different points of articulation in the mouth, the chart moves from left to right. And then the rows represent different types of speech sounds. So at the top there we have plosives, which are stops, which are made by stopping the air and then releasing it. Pa, ba, ta, da. And then next we have nasals, ma, na. Then we have trills, like ra. And then down a couple rows below that we get to fricatives, like f and v. And so on and so forth. So we go down to glides and approximants, which you don't need to know about, but anyway, you just see that this is how this chart is laid out. It's very difficult to read, I'll be honest, it's very intimidating if this is your first time ever looking at something like this, but that's why we have linguists here to help you. If you're interested, you come talk to a linguist and we'll explain how it works to you. So as you can see in the International Phonetic Alphabet, the idea is to have one unique symbol for every possible human speech sound. So we don't need to use 2 letters like we do in English for some of our speech sounds. So we have some really funny symbols in there, and I'll explain a few of those that matter today. So that is actually a very simplified chart. If we start, remember I mentioned some languages have up to 80 consonants, so this is really a more accurate representation of the number of possibilities open to humans in producing consonants for their languages. So, and there are some even more extreme ones, so I like to mention a few of these because I study them. So in Haida, massive Haida, we have some sounds that sound a lot like growling.
Oh.
And
Oh. Saan.
so you hear od and span,
Sleet.
sleet. And then also in Alaskan Haida, we hear something sounds like a cough.
Hans.
Hunt,
Saan.
span.
Hodel.
Don't know. So you can hear these. Humans can actually use very extreme sounds for speech sounds. Now, as far as I know, there are some speech sounds we produce that no language ever uses, like raspberry. Maybe one thing. A couple. Yeah. Not usually speech sounds, but very rare. Yeah. So anyway, possibilities are pretty close to endless though. So let's just, before we go into constructed languages, let's take a quick look at our own language, English. As represented here by Shakespeare. And we notice that most of these letters you should be familiar with from the English alphabet, but there's a few that you might not have seen before. So here we use theta and ed for the sounds th and the. So like thigh and thigh. And here we see the big S, which is sh, and that funny Z, which is zh. And then we see below them ch and j. So those are the symbols linguists use for those sounds. And then here we see this N with a funny tail. That is ng. So it's kind of a combination of N and G together, like in walking, talking, that kind of a thing. Now in English we only allow this at the end of words, but some languages allow it at the beginning. So next we'll look at Quenya. This is Tolkien's one kind of variety of Elvish. That's kind of, he calls it Elf Latin, but it's just kind of the older, more classical variety. And so they have some dental stops. So in English, our stops are alveolar, made with putting your tongue up to the ridge behind your teeth. In this language, you stick your tongue right like behind your teeth, so ta, da, something like that. And they also have this X symbol. So in linguistics, we use that to represent a velar fricative. So you may have heard this in other languages, or like Scottish English, like loch, something like that, or loch, some people say. And then we'll move on to Sindarin. So we see they have th and the that we have in English, but there's some other symbols here we haven't seen yet. So this circle is supposed to be underneath it. So this is a voiceless R. It sounds like something like that. RH is how it's usually transcribed. And then they also have this lateral voice is fricative, this belted L, we call it linguistics, and it sounds like an L, but you don't vibrate your vocal folds, so it sounds like shla, something like ashla. So Welsh has this sound famously, and in fact, I should mention, Quenya has a lot of elements based on the Finnish language, which Tolkien very much loved. Sindarin has a lot of elements from the Welsh language, so although he borrowed from ideas from other languages as well, and came up with lots of his own. So now we move on to Na'vi from the Avatar movies. So this language has an interesting set of stops here that are called ejectives with this little apostrophe, and you produce them by raising your larynx after you stop the air. So they sound like sorry. So maybe when you were a kid, like me, maybe other people weren't like me, I don't know, I used to experiment with speech sounds and discover these things, and then only later on to discover, oh, some languages actually use these 4 speech sounds, such as a lot of First Nations languages here in Canada. And then they also have this S sound, so you might be familiar with this from words like, in English we just reduce it to S usually, so tsunami, though, right, from Japanese. So Japanese has this sound. And then we'll move on to Klingon. So if you guys were at the Klingon talk, you've already been reviewed with this, but they have this belted L with a T in front of it, and that's even a little bit more complicated. Kla. So, and the word Klingon in Klingon is actually Klingon. So you have to remember to say that if you're going to learn Klingon. And then we have here the D and the sh sound are both produced by retroflexing your tongue. That means moving your tongue as far back as you can. Put the tip of your tongue back, so you get da and sh. And then finally, they have this, oh, I didn't go over the regular Q, which is pop, we'll see that in a second. But then they a uvular, so it's produced by pulling your tongue as far back as you can in your throat. But then Klingon has this crazy version of Q, it's the capital Q in the Klingon transcription system. It's this QX sound, so it's ha, ha. It's tough. Ha, ha, blah. Yeah, so ha, blah is a famous example. So you have to make sure you get your ha and your ha separate from each other, right? And finally, they have this glottal stop, which is from uh-oh. So, here's an English of it. Finally, Dothraki. So here in Dothraki, we see they have a tapped R, so that's like ra, like maybe Scottish English, you might hear this. And they have, I just mentioned the Q too, so ha, just regular ha, not as difficult as the ha. All right, so here we have some examples of putting sounds together. You can get, if your syllable structure is really simple, you get really long words like this in Hawaiian. Which is a reef triggerfish, official fish of Hawaii, I believe. And then in Denisofine, we can see that the syllable structure is just a bit more complicated, but because they allow lots and lots of things to be added to a word, you can get really complicated words. So best choke is knife. So you can get incredibly long words. So Denisofine is a language spoken in northern Alberta, and that sentence, it means camera, but it actually means the thing that takes a picture of, you know. So it's more of a sentence, but it's all one word. And then we can get really complex languages. So those are some very simple syllable structures. English is known for its complex syllable structures. You can get words like strengths, if you say all the sounds. So you can get, we use this formulaic thing where you pick the S, then you can pick either PT or K, and then you can pick either R or L. And we don't allow ng before a vowel, for example. So we can't say ng, we can only say ing. We can't say nye, not allowed. We can't say, and conversely, we can't say H at the end of a word. So you can't say, or very rarely. Now, when I showed this to Joey, he said, meh. So there's always a counterexample, right? Every rule is one. So and then you could get combinations in English. We allow some pretty complex syllable structures, but we restrict the combinations. Russian is known for some really crazy combinations.
Здравствуйте.
Yeah, and there you go. That's good. So you can see that they get ZDR all together at the beginning of that word. We're not allowed to do that in English, but zdra is perfectly fine in English, in Russian. So So let's look at some constructed language syllable structures, NAV, and a lot of them you'll find have very similar syllable structures. So this one allows, the things in brackets mean they're optional. So you have to have a vowel in NAV, but you have up to 2 consonants before the vowel and 1 afterwards. And here's some combinations that are allowed that are very unusual in the languages of the world. So we'll see some examples here. Oe, so you don't need any consonants, that's I or E. Oh, and then, sorry, you can get the word for harmony though, you can get lots of vowels all together. Meo, ao, ni, ai. So, it's pretty crazy. And you can see nga at the beginning of words, the word for you, nga. And, but you can get strange combinations like fkip, up among, or ain, vegetable, stuni, that's kind of you, a, rock or stone. So now we'll look at Dothraki. Same syllable structure, but we'll notice because of the combinations that are allowed, you get completely different sounding words. So they get some common ones, dra, kra, gra, those are pretty ordinary, but then you also get these nra, n, mra kind of things. So we'll look at some examples. Nris is straight. Ni, zo is raven. Plizif, so that's Prazep is horse. And Rahayesh is land and country. And finally, Klingon, similar, but you're required to have a consonant at the beginning of every syllable in Klingon.
Except for one syllable, boy, it's endearment. It doesn't have anything to do first.
Good to know. So, and then you get some interesting coded combinations coming at the end of the syllable. Like the apostrophe is the glottal stop. So these are like whoop, yip, and r, and with the r sound. So, there you go. So here's some examples from Klingon. So, short la, or you.
Short la, au, boy.
Well, okay. So in the dictionary, it actually has a glottal stop.
So if you're talking about an endearment for a baby, it's boy. If you're talking to a baby, but if you're talking about a baby, you just say boy.
So endearment, but here I have a curly sword.
Oh, okay, different word.
It's a different word.
Synonym. All right, and then jaw boy. Reg more.
Worry war. Interesting. Anyway, we're pass back to Joey now. Talk about words and sentences. So that's a bit of what sounds for you.
I can tell you it's easy to get trapped when you look at that IPA chart and you go, oh, that's such a cool sound, I need that in my language. Oh, that's such a cool sound, I need that in my language. Oh, that's such a cool sound, I need that in my language. And then your verb to be ends up being and you can't actually pronounce your language, and hopefully you have some practice before you need it to do it for a film or something. So you figured out what the sounds in your languages are, and you figured out how they're going to go together, and the simpler you keep it, the easier time you're going to have pronouncing it. So I figure, I'm a linguist, I can put together, and apparently I can't do that if there's a word in front of it. So that's why Klingon has such simple syllables, and so the actors can produce it easier. If you get a language like English that allows all these crazy things, you'll have a harder time with it, especially if you pick really crazy, not in your language sounds. But you know how they go together, and now it's time to start figuring out how your words and your sentences go together. So in Klingon, if I have the sentence, what I've literally said is the asteroid hit the starship. So Hopda is asteroid, Kepu has hit Ejdo starship. So what you're thinking is, I've said this and it means that someone's not paying attention to the close range sensors and an asteroid beat off the hull of the Enterprise, but it's not actually what it means in Klingon. What it means is that your navigational officer was too busy texting and drifted you into an asteroid. And that's because word order matters across different languages. So in English, we're like 42% of the other world's languages, and we have the order John saw the cat. The thing that does the action, the thing which the action is done upon. Subject, verb, then object. Slightly more common than that is something like Japanese, where they have subject, object, and then verb. So they'd say, John the cat saw, and it still means that John did the seeing of the cat. We're down to about 9% of the world's languages are like Irish, which is verb, subject, object, Hanechyan hat, saw John the cat, where we have the verb first, then subject and object. Then we get about 3% of the world's languages have verb, object, subject, saw the cat, did John or something like that, still meaning John saw the cat. And we have less than 1% of these 6,000 to 7,000 languages in the world that fall into the next two categories. Object, subject, verb. The cat John saw, meaning the same thing, languages like Aporina in the Amazon basin. And then maybe object, verb, subject. So we have languages like Makusi that might be object, verb, subject. The cat saw John, but still meaning John saw the cat. Some linguists debate whether or not this category is actually evidenced in natural languages, because if a language can do OVS, it can also do OSV. There are two races, I guess, that we know absolutely do speak OVS, Klingon and Yoda. So since this is the least common human language, it makes sense that it's a common alien language. So you figure out where on the spectrum you want your language to fall. Are you even going to care? Are you going to give it free order and just say, I'm going to add a little suffix onto a noun to say, this is the subject, even if it's the third thing I say, or what you're going to do. And then you figure out, is your language going to be what we call isolating or agglutinating? And this is a wide spectrum. Isolating means every concept you want to express requires a different word. Agglutinating means we're going to put a lot of prefixes and suffixes on things and have these really long, complicated words. So I showed this one Thursday night in Klingon. This was the longest verb I could come up with. I'll try to do it a little bit of justice here. Wedge. Are you not ready, sirs, to resume making each other able to go on doing what appears to be hitting one another? One verb in Klingon, because it's polyagglutinating. We do have languages that do this agglutinating thing, like spoken here in Alberta. So on this one verb in Blackfoot, negative, future, two different perfective or has been done markers, a durative marker, make, animate, and transitive third person singular pronoun, all in one verb. So these kinds of things do exist in natural languages, and so does the opposite end of the spectrum. So something like Mandarin Chinese, and I think Corey can read this without the tones.
I'll just say, 因为 Johnson 去台北，所以老师今天要不要考试？
Where everything is broken up. So because Johnson go to Taipei, everything requires a different word. This will probably be easier to pronounce, but it might seem a little invented, I guess. If you stick rigidly to every concept needs this, and you're going to have a lot of repetition in lines for your actors or something like that. If you're going to do something with suffixes, you need to think about what those suffixes are doing. So in English, we don't have a lot of suffixes. We have I walk, you walk, but he walks, she walks, it walks. We walk, y'all walk, they walk. This is, of course, unless you're from the East Coast of Canada like me, where I walks to the store every day by. Blackfoot uses different categories. So to say, I walk, we begin our verb with this neat thing. You walk begins with keet. They don't make a distinction between he or she. Both of them are just third person and they end in wa. Then they have this really cool fourth person thing. Probably just feel like you fell through a quantum loophole. There is a fourth person in Blackfoot, and it means the other third person, and it's yini. And then I'm really trying to bring this into English. Please someone help me figure out how to get this started in English. We have we but not you walk, so the we exclusive, and that contrasts with the we inclusive, or sorry, we but not you starts with neat and ends in binan, and then the we exclusive, or inclusive, we and you walk, ends in op.
It's the difference between saying, we are going to go watch Quidditch later versus we as a group are going to go
Yeah, you need the hand signals, but what if you're on the phone?
That's
So, we're going to the online talk. I don't know what y'all are doing. But you can do these fun things with language.
Is it kind of like, is it dependent on the listener? Like, if
Well, in English it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in Blackfoot, it depends on who you're talking to. If I say, we're going to the Conlang talk, I don't know what they're doing, versus we're going to the Conlang talk if you want to come with us. So it really does depend on who you're talking to, absolutely. So if you think of a way to do it without sign language in English,
Could be the difference between we and the people are.
we the people have decided. Yeah, there's all kinds of ways language do fun things, and you get to take this into account when you're making it. But you need to think about, what they're doing, what they're agreeing with. In Irish, if you have this big long string of adjectives, they all agree with the noun, whether they're masculine or feminine, singular, or plural. So, an wanting that secretive, fat, bright German little dressmaker is laughing. Where do we come up with these examples as linguists? Usually there's some dog hitting something or biting something. Klingon shows agreement too, so constructed languages do this. So if we have Klingon, the word for Romulan is Romulnashkan, and Rokeg blood pie, Rokeg ewachab. And if you're going to add a plural to one of these nouns, you need to know whether or not that thing can use language. So Romulans can use language, and if we make it plural, it's Romulashkan bu. So it's plural for things that can use language, versus Rokeg ewachab me. Rokeg. Same if I want to say my whatever the thing is, Romulashkan wit. My Romulan, it can use language, so I say wit, versus my Rokeg blood pie, Rokeg ewachab widge instead of wit. So my thing that can't use language. And that's what the gender system is in Klingon, instead of masculine or feminine or anything like that. It's just can or cannot use language. And we have to put this into a sentence, and we see this kind of agreement. So Romulashkan bu vek. Lushok da Rokeg ewachab widge. I really shouldn't have put that in yellow for you. So Romulans can use language. My Rokeg blood pie cannot use language. And then this extra bolded thing, third person plural, third person singular, has my verb agreeing with both nouns at the same time, because Klingon gets scary with that. You have to know what the thing doing the sentence or the action is, and the thing having the action done upon it, and work it out in this chart. So if you have a verb like kip, to hit, and you're playing blackjack and you want to say, I hit, you can say jip kip, because there's no object. If I want to say, you hit me, choke kip. If I want to say he, she, or it, there's no distinction in Klingon, hit you, do kip. If I want to say we hit him, her, or it, wick kip. You plural hit us, or y'all hit us, che kip. And then you'll notice there's these zeros in there, they hit them. It's just kip. Question.
So those little empty spots, it's like I and
Yeah.
does it mean that Klingon doesn't have reflexives, or
It does have reflexive, but you don't use one of these things for it. So I hit myself, I would say I hit, and then it's I to nothing, and then I add self after it. So it breaks it up again, that's a different suffix. Great questions though. Okay, so as people who want to go out and invent language, ask yourself, how do you represent the plural or the singular in your language? So in English we have bike, bikes, dog, dogs. Or this one that I really tried to convince people in Northern Ireland was true. One moose, two moose, and three or more moosey, but a swamp of moose. I had people believing me for a little while too. But your language can do that. You can put spike to mean more than one bike. Or if you're an Indonesian speaker, you're talking about a book, buku. Multiple books are buku buku. You're the authors of these new languages, so you get to do what you want. You just have to express them. Does your language use gender or animacy or noun classes, masculine, plural, capable of using language or not? Things that are round, things that are flat. Possibilities are endless there. Do you have this agreement thing on your verbs? Does your verb keep track of what's the subject and what's the object? How do you form questions? So in English, do you like this talk? The answer is obviously yes. You have a question there?
and
in Japanese, you put ka on the end of things. You can move your WH word, why, what, when, why, or how to the front of a sentence. You can leave it at the end of a sentence. There's so many possibilities.
I was just going to say you could also have positive and negative fused together. So like the Mandarin Chinese, is it or is it not? Should or should?
Should, yeah. So these are just 3 examples from languages. You can see how diverse they are. How do you form the negative? Do you have a word for not? Do you have a suffix for not? Do you have something for undo? Do you actually use future, past, present in your language? Blackfoot doesn't, things like that. So you get to be the author of this. You can draw from natural languages, draw from a bunch of natural languages and see how wild you can get. But this will tell you, now you know how your language sounds, how it's put together grammatically, and now you have to figure out what words you're going to put in those templates.
Yes, so you've got your sounds picked out, you've got your structure established. Now you need some words to fill in all the blanks. So what I'm just going to focus on for this little bit about creating a lexicon is sound symbolism, or it's typically called onomatopoeia. You might have learned about it in English class. It kind of seems boring in English class, but English is actually really cool when it comes to doing this kind of thing. We have all kinds of words that, to me anyway, certainly seem to be based on the sound that they make. They're very closely associated with the real world. So there's some examples, crash, bang, yoink. Some are more like comic bookish, biff, bams, but some of them are, regular embedded words like screech or scream. So those ones are pretty obvious, but we have even less obvious ones like whistle or whisper. If you think about those words, they're actually kind of imitating the things you're doing. Now, twinkle and bling are interesting. They're said to maybe be associated with the sound that metal makes when you flick it or hit it. So we now associate that with appearance, but it's originally a sound symbolism apparently. Splash, jump, and then some historical ones that are hard to tell. So our modern word crow in Old English was cryin, which sounds a lot like our modern word caw, right? Which is the sound a crow makes. Or flick, which Old English was flickorian, something like the sound that wings make. Goose in Old English is gosen, so it sounds much more like the honking of a goose a little bit. Cough and laugh in Old English are kauch and lauch, so that GH was actually pronounced. And if you think kauch, it sounds a lot like, and same with lauch. And then we look around other languages of the world, and you can, as you're learning these languages, say, hey, that word actually sounds a lot like what it means. So one of my favorite examples is shta, from Haida, means spit. It sounds a lot. To explode in Haida, totally explosion. And a sloshing sound, So it seems like there's some sound symbolism. So you can use this as inspiration for developing words. So in English, we also have sound symbolism of putting sounds together. So in English, GRs is one of these. Does anybody, gr, does anybody have an association that they make with gr? Can you think of what that might be? Growl, yeah, so it gives you kind of, so here's a whole set of them. Growl, grumble, grunt, grunt. What kind of feeling does that give you when you think about these words? Threatening. It's not really pleasant, right? Oscar the Grouch. Okay, so then we have this set of snut. What do you think of when you think of snut in English? Okay, yeah, so here's a whole set of those. Sneeze, sniff. Now, not every word falls into this, right? We have snow. Snow doesn't really seem to fit in this category, which seems to be something to do with noses.
You get a runny nose if it's snowing.
Yeah, I suppose. And then here's another one, slut. Anybody can think of what slut? Yes, so this is slippery things, right? So one place I found online, low resistant movements or frictionless movement and objects associated with that. So how about flub? Okay, so there's a whole set of them. Short, quick movements, especially wings, okay? And here's one that instead of at the beginning, words at the end, so utter. Yeah, so here's a whole set of them, mutter, stutter, sputter. Quick repetitive noise or vocalizations. And what I think is really interesting, if you look at these two sets of words, you can put them together, flow and utter, and what do you get? So you get the quiet, repetitive wings. So you get the wing sound and the quick repetitiveness going together. And then another thing you can look at for creating a lexicon is compounding. So this is a very common thing in the languages of the world. Our language used to do it a lot more than we do today. So I'm going to read these in their modern English form, but what do you think a leafworm was in Old English? Caterpillar, that's right, caterpillar. How about a bookhouse? Perfect. What about a bone house? No, it's good guesses. It's actually a body. Your body is your bone. So some of them are very, I should mention, some of them are very metaphorical. They're not necessarily as literal. What about bee bread? Honey, that's right. And what about the loaf board, the loaf guardian?
It's the guy.
We actually still have this word in modern English. It got squished down to lord.
Yeah.
So this is the lord. This is the person that's the person that dispenses the bread. So in Sindarin, we find exactly the same thing. In fact, Tolkien made great use of compounding. So some of you might have heard of the dragon. I think it's Ancolian the Black. So his name means biting storm. Gilthoniel, the star kindler. Elvalon, elf friend. Melon, the M becomes V in this word due to special rules, which I'm not going to talk about at all. So Ellen is elf, Melon, you put them together, you get Elvalon. And then Morgoth, the dark enemy. So you can use this productively, even in Sindarin. So there's this XKCD comment. So these folks are at the Durin's door trying to get into Moria, just like in the Lord of the Rings movies and books, I'm sure you're familiar with. I've got it. What's the Elvish word for friend? Melon. Rumble. The door starts to open. So this inquisitive linguistic type says, so what's the Elvish word for frenemy? And this guy, you know, very knowledgeable about these root words in Sindarin, Melogoth, and the door is so disappointed and it's the wrong word that it just slams shut in their face. Done. So, but as you can see from the ones we just looked at, Goth meaning enemy, Melon meaning friend, you put them together, you can make a new word, frenemy, in Sindarin. So it's a great way to come to words. And then also the final thing is cultural metaphors. So in Dothraki, so these cultural metaphors are just languages paint the world in very different ways. So for example, in Dothraki, to say how are you, you don't say how are you, you say Hashir Dothrai check. And Dothrai, that root means to ride. So Dothraki are those who ride, right? So even they call themselves the riders, basically. So in Dothraki, you say how are you? You say, do you ride well? Because everything is based around horses in their culture. And if you're going to tell somebody to be cool, you actually say, Dothrais check, ride well. And then also you can extend the meanings of words. So for example, there's this word Fredri, the sound of horses' hooves on dirt. Okay, so that's again an automatic pay word. And then you can extend that to Fredrik, one who sounds like horses' hooves, but they use that again metaphorically. One who sounds like horses' hooves probably sounds a lot like me, it's a chatterbox. So, and then they also have Vishatherai, to break a horse or domesticate a beast of burden, get one's first kill with a new weapon. So you have this whole range of meanings associated with one word. So the meaning of this word is something like to do something with something for the first time, or make something work. It's kind of weird to think about it, but it can mean all these different things. So those are some things to think about when making a lexicon.
All right, so those are the mechanics. Is anyone in here actually actively working on their own language right now? A few people started already? Oh, wow, actually there's a lot of people, that's awesome. So you might already be past the getting started stages, but this was an example from, I'm blanking on his name now, but he said to, make this one little bit of scribble, which go forth in peace to love and serve the Lord. This is part of his world. Rosenfelder, thank you. He had to decide the sounds of the language, create the lexicon, create the grammar, design the alphabet, modify the alphabet for cursive, and then translate the text into this new language. That's a lot of steps to get to this tiny little thing that he's going to put in a book. For those of you who are just getting started, you really have to know who's going to speak your language, and I can't stress that enough. That is the first step. So the language you heard when this opened, Zill, the Zill beings were already created in Dungeons & Dragons for me, so I knew they didn't have lips. I knew they had 4 arms. I knew they wanted to implant eggs into intruders. That's how they propagate their species. And I know that language isn't likely going to go any further than this talk in my Dungeons & Dragons game. A face hugger, there you go. So figure out how much you need to put into the language. Do you have just a fragment like Tolkien's Black Speech and it's the One Ring thing? Do you have a couple of words throughout your novels like Stephen King's High Speech? So you have ka as a wheel, and most of the sentences in English, but you have to say, this fate thing is ka, and ka tet is the people bound by fate. Are you going to have just, well, it's not even a single movie anymore. They announced 3 more? Yeah, 4 more Avatar coming out. There's an entire council developing, not V words, so it was originally just 1,000 words, the 1,000 words they needed for the script. But now they have a full language. Or do you have Star Trek's Klingon, where you had to translate Hamlet and The Art of War and Much Ado About Nothing and to continue or not to continue. So that's it. Figure out the who and the why, and then everything else will start coming together, and you can use sort of the templates we were giving you today to figure that out. And I'll end in a Klingon Pitronesh, we thank y'all. And I think we have about 3 minutes for questions, because we were taking questions throughout.
But Joey and I are happy to stand out in the hallway afterwards and answer all the questions.
Okay. So not long ago, somebody created that language for Avatar.
Yeah.
Was that how you paid?
Well, Palmer,
I wish
he is a professional, he's a linguist like us who works at a university, so he's a professor, so it's probably a side gig, but he might be making something. I don't think it's not something you enter for the money, no.
Well, some people do. So David Pedersen, who invents all of the Game of Thrones languages, that is his profession. He goes around inventing languages for movies. So you make enough to live off of, and then he gets invited to things like this to talk about how he does it. He writes books, and I think he's doing quite well. I don't have a figure for it.
He gives talks, to professional organizations like Google and stuff where they pay him. So he's finding income wherever he can, yeah, for sure.
Most people do it as a subject. No, because the movie actually owns the rights to that language, so if you ever look not on these slides, it's Klingon TM. And Paramount really does own Klingon, although that's actually right now.
It's in court.
It's in court, yeah.
Right now. About whether or not Klingon is a living language or whether it's owned by a corporation.
Like, can you email people? I'd be interested in getting an email as well.
If you want to give us your email, we'll definitely contact you. I know I'm going to be doing either 1 or 2 day workshop on how to invent a language sometime in July and August. So if I get your email, I'll definitely
That's
invite
here
you.
in Calgary.
It'll be here in Calgary at University.
We have to warn you, this presentation is actually really large with all of the sounds and videos embedded in it, so maybe we might do a modified version or something.
I will be putting it on YouTube. There's I filmed it for us.
Okay,
so.
and maybe a zip file or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, we will be happy
How
to
would
share.
we find it on YouTube?
Give us your email. I don't know what I'll name it yet. It'll have the name of the convention, like Calgary Comic Entertainment Expo.
Probably just search how to construct a language.
Yeah. Cool. So we're going to clear the room so the next panel can come in, and if you have questions or you want to leave an email with us or anything like that, we'll meet you out in the hall after we tear down.
Yeah, come and talk to us for a few minutes. We'll be on the hall.